deploying OpenAFS cells using Ansible. Basically, really kind of go over just a high-level 30,000-foot view of Ansible, and then basically look at how to use Ansible to actually deploy an AFS cell. So what is Ansible? Ansible is an open source tool, basically does software provisioning, configuration management, and application deployment. It's very lightweight. It basically doesn't require agents on the target or the host systems. The only thing it really depends on is that you should be able to SSH into the box, and it has Python sitting there. The control, you basically configure Ansible and what you're trying to do using YAML control files. So, and by lightweight also, I mean, when I was looking at Ansible in a previous life, we were looking at it as opposed to Chef or Puppet, and both of those were basically they require like database servers and this huge infrastructure in order to to utilize them. Ansible, it's basically just this utility. You point it to some configuration files, and you're good to go. So, so basically, Ansible, there's this thing called an inventory, and this is an example of an inventory file. In there, you basically see 6 hosts, AFS 01 through AFS 06. And you can basically create groups in the host file or in this inventory. So in this case, we have 4 groups. We have the KDCS, we have which is AFS 01. The databases are going to be on 1, 2, and 3. The file servers are going to be in 4 and 5. And then we're going to put a client on all 6 of them. This is a little bit of an eye chart. So basically, and I'll just kind of go through this. So you have these hosts or these inventory of kind of like, well, this is where I want to, this is what I want to affect, and some configuration for it. But then you have tasks, and what a task is in Ansible, it's basically it's a module. Ansible has these things called modules, and a module will basically do something on the target, on the host. Ansible modules are idempotent. Basically, it means that if you run it again, if something like they copied a file, well, it's not going to recopy the file because it's already there. And the different modules will try to accomplish that if you rerun these things, it basically won't change the state after. In other words, like if the state was already there before it ran, then it won't change the state if it's what needs to be. So in this particular bit, if you can see this, basically the first task in here is we're creating some cell-wide configuration files, and what we're doing in this case, we're pulling some templates out of the configurations that we have on the system that we're controlling this from, and we're basically saying, that the files that we want is the cell serve DB, this cell, and the user list, and we basically say here's the source and here's the target of where we want to put it. We created a Kerberos service key. And so there's a command we can basically run and say, okay, here's the command we'd like to run, and some parameters to it. And in this case, we can look to say, well, we want to say that when the inventory host name is equal to the Ansible play host 0. So we can basically say when it's a particular thing, we only want to do this once on one particular host. We can include other tasks. In this case, we're including some stuff that's going to do some stuff for firewalls. So we're going to configure firewalls for this. When AFS firewall is defined. So in other words, you can have conditionals in here. Set up SE Linux. So in this particular, for this playbook, or this set of tasks, we want to turn on, and it's configurable. Do we want to enable SE Linux? Do we want to run it in permissive mode or enforcing mode? And one of the things that we had to do with this is actually define some extra SE Linux policies in order to get things to run cleanly out there. And so those are actually included when we kind of get into deploying the part of it. I'll kind of talk about that a little bit more. So, but that's a task or a set of tasks in there. What is Ansible Continue? Roles. A role in Ansible, it's a defined directory structure that you put some YAML files and your some of your other files out into there. And so it's a set of tasks and other configuration files, and it represents a discrete unit within Ansible. So, for example, a specific file, a specific service. So if you have a web server, you would define, well, this is how you would set up like an Apache web server. It doesn't matter where it is, this is how you would define an Apache web server. And the configurations and stuff like that would basically be, this is what we want to go into this web server, regardless. Then the inventories will basically say, well, I'd like to put the web server on this system or that system, but a role really is kind of defining, just this is this service that we'd like to do. And the idea really behind roles is it helps promote reusability and modularity out there. So this is the role for a Kerberos server. And again, sorry about the size on this. So basically what you have is that you have some defaults. You have some files, right there's a policy that we would like to set forward. And it says Debian there. There's handlers, there's some tasks, basically how do you install it from APT, how do you install it from Yum. Main is the one that actually gets invoked and it makes some decisions on what it wants to do. There's some templates in here and some variables, and what variables are, they can contain configuration and stuff like, this is the value we'd like to use for this. So the next level up is playbooks. So what a playbook is, it basically you declare the configuration list the host and the roles that you would like to really try to do. So it's kind of like the top level glue that says, okay, I have these hosts, and here's some configuration variables I'd like to have, and here's the roles. So what we have in here is install OpenAFS servers. The host, we want to point it to the AFS databases. We'd like to have the AFS file servers. Any errors are basically, they're fatal. And the role is the OpenAFS server with this. And there's a thing that says become, and that's just an option with Ansible. The basis is when you log in, become root. So now specifically for OpenAFS, there's a GitHub project out there, OpenAFS contrib and Ansible OpenAFS. Thank you, Mike.
Started in January this year.
Yes. It's really, and so it's a collection of Ansible roles to set up and deploy an OpenAFS environment. So what roles are basically being provided? Well, we have something that sets up a Kerberos server. We have some and configures the realm for it. We have setting up a Kerberos client, something that sets up an AFS server, the AFS client, the cell portion of it. So that basically kind of finishes the rest of the configuration. And then there's these two other roles out here. One is development and robotest. And tomorrow you get to hear all about the robotest for Mike. But and development is basically, it's a role for basically you can point to, well, here's a repo, please build like a server or a client, and then it kind of solve from there. Otherwise, it's just going to go out after a Yum or a Debian repository to get the code for it. There are some sample playbooks. Basically, there's a realm playbook, there's a server's playbook, and a client's and cell. So what you can do with this, there's a playbook that kind of ties these all together. That if you basically just point to it, those are the 4 things you need to basically deploy an entire cell. And so here's kind of an example inventory directory structure. We have group variables. So this basically would go for any variables that if you needed to configure some specifics for the AFS file servers, would go into that file. This is for all the hosts. You have some specifics for the cell, so there'd be like the cell name, and stuff of that nature. And then there's a thing within Ansible that basically allows you to store passwords in a safe fashion. They're encrypted, and so that basically you can, like, well, here's what the admin password's going to be. Here's what the like a couple users are going to be. So you can kind of set that up for a deployment, and then you have the hosts file, which basically again just points off to, well, here's the systems we'd like to have and the groups for it. And here's an example of what goes into these variables. So AFSL, example.com, the realm that we're going to use is example.com. AFS volumes, test. We got 4 users, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Some AFS groups, which consist of user 1 and user 2.
Just a point of clarification here. That would be just the initial set of things for getting the cell like bootstrapped up. After that, you wouldn't use these just to, like, the point here is not to be using this to manage your volume of users. It's just to create the initial set of volumes for your
Yep. So the nice thing really with what Ansible really does is, in this particular case, is it helps you get that initial setup and going with it. Again, here's the file servers configuration. We got 3 partitions, A, B, and C. And let's see if I can get over to that movie. Do I have to drag this somewhere, Mark, or to get the movie?
Drag it on. Just drag it on.
Okay. Here. Thank you, sir.
I'm going to get rid of this first. There we go. Okay.
So this is basically installing Kerberos, or installing and creating a cell in a set of virtual machines. It took 12 minutes on my laptop running KVM, and this is kind of it, just kind of going through. And so here's.
Do you know it takes so much time?
No, I'm not compiling any modules. I think we kind of go through where are some of the.
You said 12 minutes. This is a time lapse.
Yeah. This is a time lapse. I think one of the areas, there's this particular spot where it's setting up.
I think that takes the most time, where installing installing. If you don't have local mirrors, so the packages that's going
Yeah.
to longer.
Oh, so it's fetching stuff.
Yeah, it's fetching stuff, it's installing RPMs, it's, creating directories, it's waiting for services to start.
And the second thing that takes a long time is if you have multiple databases, it's got to, do an election, and that's going to take like 75 seconds or whatever the time is.
It waits for
Yeah.
you to be settled.
Yeah, because we do transactions, we have to start.
Oh, yeah,
We have to create the individual users and volumes and everything.
Yeah, so here's, we start the AFS servers, creating the admin. I think creating the admin is one of the steps that takes a little
Because
while.
in order to create admin users, the databases have to be up and running, and so they have to go through their election process, and that takes a little bit of time. That's why
So,
but I find I create local mirrors of the repos that makes things go much faster.
Things like you could possibly just for setup, like define one database server just to do the creates. Then afterwards you can restart them.
yep. Yeah, so anyway, so this is basically just the, kind of going through. Here you can basically see what we're, pulling in the client. We're including the tasks. And so we're basically, because we've already installed some of the stuff, we're skipping it. That's the item potent for that particular thing. But here we're pulling in the install for Yum. And I think for some of these it skips over because it's already kind of done. So because some of this was kind of pulled in on when it was setting up the servers, which was on 1 through 5, it's already done, but AFS 6 was the one that needed to be kind of completed on. So.
Yeah, everywhere it says okay, it means that app it's already up to date,
Yep.
like you were saying before, so nothing's changed. Just okay, just check
Right.
it's okay. And then in the line below where it says change, it actually found something that was out of date and
Yep.
it updated it.
Yeah, so right here, this is updating the local cell configuration, the cell cert DB, and it had to be done on all of these. So, and here's basically, mounting, the root cell, granting world, setting read only, releasing, flushing, and all of it. So basically after that, that's,
You can go back to your presentation.
yeah. There's one more screenshot. There it goes. So basically, I logged into the client. I did a KNet on admin, AK log, and all servers are running, and then did a list fall. So there it is, and so that's Ansible and yeah, and deploying. And I mean, Mike has really been doing a lot of some of the setup work on this, and I've been his guinea pig on using this. And so, any questions?
So when we have written the playbooks, so these playbooks goes to the target system over SSH and there they get executed.
Yep. Yeah, the way that Ansible works under the covers is that it requires Python on the target system, and what it does is it actually ships a Python, a set of Python scripts over to the target, and then invokes those scripts on the target, and it kind of just does its magic from there, and so.
So that means so what Cheyenne showed here is he's showing a sample where he did an Ansible playbook. He created a set of virtual machines, like probably CentOS machines.
Yep.
They're CentOS machines. And there's nothing on them, just CentOS, just bare box.
So does that
And then,
before
but he-
Ansible
What's that?
create the
virtual machines are set before Ansible as
Yeah.
well, so that's out of the scope of it. So it's like you have to have some way of creating virtual machines up front. Then using some, when you create them, you make sure you have an account on there that you can SSH to. And if you have to have a password or you have to have an SSH key on that machine. But most of the systems, when you're deploying virtual machines, there's ways to do that easily now, right? So use like how do you
So the way that I do this is that I have a template virtual machine that I've configured that I can SSH into, and it has my SSH keys into it, and basically it's pretty much a fairly bare bone CentOS system, and so then I have that as my template, and then I clone it. And so I cloned six virtual machines off of it. In this particular case, what you saw here was using KVM, and I run virt clone, and then virt sysprep or whatever. And I can show you the scripts that I use for this. It's really not that difficult. And then. So basically what I have in terms of the virtual machine, I love virtual machines, by the way, and I've been doing them for a really long time. So I have a couple scripts that basically will make my CentOS AFS systems, and it just does some cloning of them. I have a run script that basically just fires them up. I have a stop that basically just knocks them down, a nuke, which basically blows away the clone, and I also have a snapshot, so that one of the things I can do with it is I can basically run the Ansible playbooks and shut them down, and then say, okay, I'd like to make a snapshot of it right here. And then I can basically bring them up, and then restore that snapshot without having to even go through the 12 minutes with it. So,
wait, are there any Ansible like plugins or rules or whatnot to create the VMs for you?
yeah, well, there are, and that's really kind of out of scope of this, but there are Ansible modules that will basically manipulate. Will manipulate virtual machines.
Okay. Yeah, so this is just talking about the Open-AFS stuff that we did for that.
Right.
So you could still do the whole thing.
Yep, you could do the whole thing, using Ansible with it. So.
or you could use like Atomic or a lot of other things.
Yep.
Terraform.
So.
Suppose someone has written the deployment scripts in Puppet. Is there easy way to migrate to Ansible?
From Puppet to Ansible?
From scratch.
I think, I know a lot of sites use a mixture of Ansible and Puppet because they have different strengths and weaknesses. It seems Ansible has a real low learning curve, and it seems nicer for installing new things, where Puppet seems better for keeping things in sync after they've been deployed. That's my understanding. But
Like
I know they're both used places.
and like I said, in a previous life, I looked at some of the other configuration management, or some of these tools, and really, what it really kind of boiled down to is it really looked like the Chef and Puppet answers were kind of targeted more for, I got this huge data center, I got 500 servers sitting out here, and I need to kind of manage all of them, kind of thing, and so you have you probably at that point you have the resources to really set up a Puppet or Chef server that has the databases in it and the web GUIs and whatever you need. Ansible is pretty much, yum install Ansible. Okay, there it is. Ansible playbook. Or even just like you can say Ansible. You can point to the host file, and there's a raw command. So it's like, hey, I just need to run this command ad hoc across these 5 systems or whatever. So I could say Ansible, point to the inventory, AFS server, do something, and it's just right there. So I really, don't need to have, this huge infrastructure to support Ansible. So it's really nice from a small system or a small environment. And to be honest with you, one of the things, and I want to say thank you, Mike, for coming up with these, because it makes my life easier with, is because, like I said, I'm the new kid in the development team at SNA, and so one, it gives me a good example on how to set up an AFS cell and stuff like that, and some of the nuances that are out there, but it just makes it real convenient because I can simply say, hey, I need a test environment. Poof, it's there, and so I can run tests and stuff like that.
There are so many steps which are happening in Ansible playbook, right? If something fails in between, is the cleanup we have to do Ansible takes care of it.
If there's a failure,
So there is a new role I have to add for that or something.
Normally you have to fix the problem
Yep.
and then run it again because they're item open. It should just fix the things that didn't.
Yeah.
So like in the example that Cheyenne showed, he showed something that said errors are fatal. Because the way we're using this, we wanted to stop and then fix the problem and then fix it and then run it again. But by default, Ansible will just do as much as it can, and so that you have to it'll keep going basically, even if there are errors, and it'll do as much as it can, and then if there are problems, you can look at the log and then fix the problems and run it again.
So whatever steps it has executed the problem, those steps will not get created.
Yeah, if you run something and it's supposed to update 1,000 hosts, and one of them doesn't work, well, the other 900 are okay, and so 909 are okay, and then you can continue, and then you can get pick up one.
But I think, I'm not sure if you're asking about this, but it doesn't like remember which steps failed and which ones succeeded and like skip the steps that succeeded. If something succeeded, then the next time it runs, it still looks at that step, but it just sees that the file is already in the state it's supposed to be, so it doesn't do it.
Right.
Oh, and the
So
other
every
thing
single
that-
time you run it, it goes through every single step. So if it needs to update for any reason.
But another thing that we have turned off in our configurations normally is Ansible by default will create something called retry scripts. And what happens is every time there's a failure, it'll just say these are the things you need to retry. So you can just limit it to retrying just those things.
Okay.
But yeah, so you can do that, but I just do let it do everything because I don't know, just go ahead. But yeah.
Maybe try to summarize, it seems like this is like the current effort that you have here, which is not necessarily general to Ansible, is more about like setting up something small and local for like a single developer that doesn't have a lot of resources.
Well-
Maybe like it might be more for managing large cluster of things in production.
No.
Do you use Ansible?
Yeah, I mean, you could use this for deploying, in other words, like setting up a fairly large deployment of OpenAFS. It's basically just going to the host file and say, okay, here's the file servers, here's where I want this.
I guess that from our use case, we just need something, for a small, spinning up small development site, just a dozen servers. But we don't want to limit it to just that. So we made the code available as tools that eventually we'd like to get into Ansible Galaxy. Because if you look at Ansible Galaxy, there's thousands and thousands of rules for everything.
What's Ansible Galaxy?
So
Say what Ansible Galaxy.
So what Ansible Galaxy is that it's a collection of roles that are out there. So there's two things really. Is that Ansible has the list of modules, and the modules is like, well, I need to start a service. Well, it will figure out, well, are you running system D or are you running something else? And some of these modules will figure that out. So, for example, I run Gen 2 and it doesn't use System D, and some of these services or some of these modules understand, oh, you're running this type of thing. So on a Gen 2 system, I will start using the Gen 2 way. On a Red Hat or CentOS system, I will start it this way. But the fact is that that service will be started. So I could say, the service Apache started, and Ansible will look at the hosts and says, oh, okay, well, I got a Red Hat, and I got a Debian, and I got a Gen 2 system or whatever, and it'll kind of do what it needs to do. So you can kind of mix and match also some of the distributions within some of this. And there are, in this particular, in what we've been working on, there are specifics that there are some things really different between Debian and Red Hat, that we have separate configurations or separate tasks or that are in there that get pulled in depending on what that distribution is. So, Ben, you had a?
Yeah, I just have one other general comment, not ready for the presentation in particular, but just thought I'd point out for everybody writing presentations, RFC 2606 reserves the .example and .test TLDs, as well as example.com and example.net and example.org. So if you want to have more exciting examples, there's some other choices you can make.
Wait, what are the other ones we can use?
You can use example.com, example.org, example.net.
Wait, what besides example?
But there's also some TLDs, like .test, .example, .invalid is also reserved, but we don't use that, and .localhost.
Oh, you're saying we should change the name here? The domain?
You can if you want.
No, he's saying that one is fine, but there's other ones. So I was also using example.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
that's
if you want
good to know because we want to have the example that's multiple domain.
to, yeah, if that's right, and it's clearly more distinct. You can go to some other stuff.
Okay, thank you.
I guess,
Going back to, go ahead.
I guess one thing along that line is we have use XCAT and we've used that for years, something similar. Well, one thought is that after it's built is, and depending on how big your group is and who's in your group, you may have junior administrators that are allowed to run that and overwrite what's already on. So we actually specifically go out and at times break it specific ways. Different ways, but just changing a MAC address or whatever. So you're not going to actually go out, well, or a little bit different, but you're not going to go out next and do a fix-a boot and rebuild an entire file server. Actually, I thought there too is, my best friend just went and wiped out my entire AFS stuff.
Well, it's like, there's this,
But again, it is, this is great for a small developer.
Yeah, I mean, so basically the way that Ansible works is that it uses your credentials of where you're logged into, and where you're running the Ansible command from, and that's what it uses to log into the target system with. And so if, in other words, if my ID that I was logged into and Ansible's running on the command line, if I can't SSH into that system, well, obviously I can't run Ansible. And if I don't have, I guess it's sudo capability on that system, then I can't do the become, and so I'm not allowed to do anything that's that would require root authority. So there are ways that you can do it. And I mean, in a certain sense, is that, well, if I can SSH into that system and do nasty commands, well, I can do the nasty commands using Ansible. So,
Well, most of the time it's a mistake, though.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I did, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, but I think the point is that, like in my mind, like you said stuff about like companies usually use for larger, like corporate stuff, but you can use this for very large installations, but it's just a lower level tool. So you can have things like delegation and administration rights, but that's something like another layer. So so this tool is the thing that actually does the configuration and such, but you have something above it, so like nobody's allowed to run Ansible directly. You would go through some other delegation system, something like that. So some of the other configuration management systems, they build all that like together into one thing. So it's just a matter of, it's just, some of those are more like they're bigger, more configured, whereas this is a smaller tool that can be built. You can build a system like that out of different systems.
So I'll not
Stuff like that for Ansible too, but that's the commercial Ansible.
yeah. Yeah, Ansible has, well, basically Ansible is, I guess now being run out of the Red Hat, underneath Red Hat. And they actually have a product, I think it's called Ansible Tower, that basically starts adding more stuff on top of this that, that basically adds in the nice little GUIs and some stuff that, makes it into a much larger tools. So, but like I said, so Ansible itself is basically it's written in Python. I know there was some discussion about programming languages a little bit earlier, so it's a fairly small and lightweight environment. It will also interact with Windows as well. So I think there's some requirements on it, but basically it can drive some stuff going into Windows, and you can do Windows configuration with it. So Ansible Galaxy is a user, I think it's more like a user community where you can basically put playbooks and roles out there. What's that?
A CPAN for Ansible.
Yes, a CPAN for Ansible. You have the Ansible site itself that has most of the modules that are out there. So that's kind of another area. So, any other questions?
No other questions. Sean's listening though, and I'll just say he's not a fan of Python.
Do anything on that comment?
Any other questions for Sean?